Hi everyone. So it's I think coming to the third week of January, and I hope everyone is having a good time getting back into the flow of your work and everything in your life. Yeah, and after the holiday season, I read an article somewhere. Okay, last week I read an article that actually said that a lot of us when we come into out of the holidays, actually some of us actually feel more tired than we were before. Okay, that's because we have a kind of a sense of inertia, which means that we are actually resting and trying to have things slow down, and then suddenly before we know it, we are plunged into a new year again. And some of us, we have new year resolutions and we have wishes that we actually created. And sometimes, although while this can motivate us to go on, it can also cause us to realize that some of the resolutions actually that we make may not be fulfilled because of things that are out of our control, which actually, if you've been following us in the Bible's talk, we actually realize that a lot of things in our lives are actually out of our control. Things that we cannot predict, things that are uncertain. As we move ahead into 2022, you may be feel that you may be facing some of these pressures. It can be at work, it can be in terms of relationship, it can be in terms of friendship, or even in your finances. Okay, things that actually cause you to feel that life is not as simple as you would hope for it to be, right? So today, as we dive in once again into the book of John, into this context, my hope is that all of us will be refreshed, that even while we face an uncertain future, even while we face a future that may seem filled with impossible odds in terms of our resolutions, the good news of the Bible, the good news of the gospel is not that our resolutions will be fulfilled, but the good news of the gospel is, to us, is that Jesus's story will be fulfilled. Jesus's hope and dream for us, if we commit ourselves to him, will be fulfilled, in that he will do what he has purposed to do, which is in John 1, just to recap, we have been told, right, is to actually bring us back into true life, because he is the true life and he's the true light. So if we choose to trust in him and believe in him, he is truly giving us what will eventually last, even outlast our short lives on earth, and continue into eternity. So let us dive into today's topic. Okay, so just a recap, we have been moving through the book of John, and we are in John chapter 2. So in John chapter 2, we were saying there was a wedding. And this is the first thing that Jesus would actually do in the in the public's eye, right? So I mean, yes, a lot of famous people, right? What they do would be very staged and planned to get the approval of others, right? For their own fame, to grow their target audience and stuff like that, right? They'll be doing their demographics. And a lot of times, I've heard preachers actually saying that that's what Jesus was trying to do here, is trying to make a point about, I mean, this is the first of his visible public ministry, and he's trying to yeah, display his glory, right? I mean, you even see that word in 11, verse 11. So if I can zoom in for us. Say this, the first of his signs, okay, which we talked about it last time we actually met, was actually to turn the water into wine. The first of the signs, which is to actually turn the water into wine, right? And we're saying that actually this was actually to manifest his glory. Okay, but we must ask ourselves, and manifest is the meaning of this word means to show his glory, right? So, I mean, of course, the one thing to ask ourselves is the way Jesus show his glory the same as the way a public person would display their, their talent, their ability, so that people can actually admire them. Okay, so I mean, all of us have our certain celebrities that we follow or idols on our Instagram and stuff like that. Hopefully, we're not too obsessed with it. Okay, yeah, if you're a young person, then try not let's fight against getting addicted to such things, okay, because trends change, right? But the true essence of our person is our character. Okay, that doesn't change, so we should be working on that rather than trying to get addicted to things that are outside of us, right? Yeah, so but anyway, so is the way Jesus show his glory the same as the way a famous person would show his glory? Okay, I think we can point out that actually it is not so at all. The way Jesus showed his glory is not for the approval of those around him. How do we know that? Firstly, because we have said before, okay, when Jesus came to the wedding, it was just a plain receiving this invitation so that he can, celebrate together with actually not his own friend, but someone that Mary knew, right? So if you look at here, on the third day, there was a wedding and the mother of Jesus was there. And we'll say that actually Jesus was not the direct guest, but it was actually Mary, right? So along with Mary, Jesus was invited. So therefore, this shows that Jesus did not, in some sense, it is not a planning to get there, in some sense, out of his own accord because he wants to do something great. Okay, that was not part of the plan. He was just going there as part of Mary's, you can say, agenda. Okay, although we can later on you'll find out, right, that everything that happens under God's control. So yes, in some sense, it was ordained by God that this will be the first of his miracles, the turning of the water into wine. But we will see that, we'll see that in context as a whole. But for now, it was actually Mary's plan. Mary brought Jesus along. And it was Mary's request that got Jesus to actually, in some sense, step into this miracle, right? Mary asked Jesus, they have no wine. Yes, last week we said that Mary, actually, the way faith works, right, is that when we come to God, a lot of us actually think that we go to God and we have this idea that God needs our advice, right? So, but it's very natural to do that. Why? A lot of times I have heard preachers saying, you shouldn't come to God and try to advise him. He doesn't need your advice at all. He doesn't need your advice. He just needs you to submit, right? Well, it's true, but why do we have this tendency to advise God? A lot of times our advice comes from the fact that we are terribly troubled, right? Our advice, why do we advise God? Okay, our advising God comes from a heart of worries, right? We feel really worried and troubled because we don't have control, right? And I feel that actually a lot of times, okay, we have no control. If you feel that you have control of your life, you will not come to God, right? You would be doing it on your own. The fact that you're even trying to pray, okay, actually shows that you're moving one step in the right direction. You're actually moving one step in the right direction of realizing that you have zero control, but he has total control. Just as Jesus would demonstrate in this wedding that where there is no wine, he can even turn plain water, okay, into the best wine, right? That when the master of the feast drank of it, he says this, right? Everyone serves the good wine first, but you have kept the good wine until now. So Jesus didn't just change the water into normal wine. He changed it into the best wine, into the good wine, right? Yeah, but the fact is that only God can do that. So therefore, when we come to God, a lot of us come with this sense of this knowledge that we are not in control, and therefore we want to go to someone who actually have control over our lives. So it's one step in the right direction. Although a lot of us, when we take a step back, we can ask ourselves, why do we have this tendency to advise God? Yeah, so it comes out of this heart of worry, right? But if you look at Mary, while she is, definitely worried, if she's not worried, why is she asking him? Right? If she's like, I don't care. Okay, I don't care if they have enough wine. I'm just going to do my own thing, right? I'm not going to bother. But the point of it is that she's very concerned. Okay, there is definitely a concern. When she comes to Jesus, there is a concern, which is that there is a lack. We talk about this. So when we look at our life this year, right, and the year that's passed, we may be asking ourselves, right, what are we lacking? Okay, and some of us may be lacking in more than just the material things like finances and all that. Okay, we may be lacking our health, which is something that is quite serious, right? Our health may be deteriorating, right? Or some of us, our relationships are fractured. Our relationships, we just don't know how to move on to a more to stability, right? Our relationship is just constantly marred by this sense of being stuck at a certain place, right? So that's all that life is. Can be cruel. Life can be really, really hard, right? And the Bible doesn't deny that. Therefore, there's this request. If the Bible is a jolly good story, then there won't be this sense of plea, right? They have no wine. How do you think Mary said it? Do you think Mary is like, they have no wine? No, right? Mary must be, they have no wine, right? And Jesus said to her, so the point is that it is something that got Jesus' attention, right? It must be something that came out of there's a sense of desperation, right? It's not something that Mary is just making a comment. Jesus said, okay, yeah, they never prepare. I know this couple, they never prepare for their stuff, and look at their wedding, right? So it's not a joke. It's not a joke, okay? It's from a heart of worries and a heart that I have zero control, but Jesus, I know who you are. I know you can. I know you can do this miracle, right? And so therefore, last time we met, we said that what? Mary, but yet, if you look at Mary's sentence, they have no wine. Mary leaves it to Jesus that what he does is best. So what he does with a request, whether he wants to answer it or whether he wants to answer it with a no, meaning that or should I say answer it with a different approach rather than meeting the request of giving more wine, okay, the underlying request, okay, he just allows it to be so. He can do both. There's no guarantee here, and Jesus never said, okay, surely I tell you there will be wine. No, I mean, although we know he produced wine, but that's completely his sovereignty, right? He's sovereign. So you see, he says, when Mary tells the servants, do whatever he tells you, is on the basis of his sovereignty, which means that Jesus is completely in control. Okay, sovereignty. And that's why in the whole book of John 1, what did we say? We started out by saying that in him is life, right? Without him, nothing that was made would have been made. Nothing that was made would have been made. The idea that we're trying to say even at that point was that the idea of creation would not even exist. The idea of creating would not even exist if God did not create the world through his son. If Jesus did not create the world, he the creator, if he stepped out, right, or he abandoned the project, we would not be here. I will not be speaking to you, right? I mean, Mary would not be having this problem because she wouldn't have existed, and there'll be no grapes to even produce wine. But the fact that there's this problem actually shows that there is such a thing as wine, right? And there is such a thing as the one who creates wine. And therefore, Jesus is the one who is actually the creator. He's stepping into the scene, right? But even with stepping into the scene, he's not guaranteeing that, okay, yeah, don't worry, you have told me the problem, I will solve it. He didn't say that, right? In fact, he says, my hour has not yet come. What does this have to do with me? If you read the Bible, right, God does not guarantee that our life will be a life of ease. So unlike what I've been hearing for at least a good 10 years or so of my life, or even more than that, right? Especially in certain churches where I've been to for a long time, I devoted myself to such teachings that if you can speak it, it is true. If you can speak it, it can happen. Or if you have the faith, it can happen. That's rubbish. The Bible doesn't talk like that. The way the Bible talks is that when you pray, if you pray according to God's will, and the fact is that you will not know everything there is to know about God's will, right? So the fact is that God is still sovereign in the midst of your praying, which means that the one who decides what to do with your request or what to do with your situation must be God. That is the hard part, right? But although as I said just now, right, why do we advise God? We don't do this because we disrespect. I mean, there is some sense that we sometimes sinfully disrespect him, and we don't understand that he's totally wise and good. Yes, that's sin, that's unbelief. But which we said before, sin is anything that we do independently from God, which was what happened after God created a perfect world, which is what plunged the perfect world into chaos, which we see all around us today, right? But a lot of times we try to advise God, okay, advise God, not because that actually we deliberately want to sinfully disrespect him, okay, but we do that because of a heart of worries, because we realize that we have zero control, and it makes us worried on the inside, right? So a lot of times what we need is actually that comfort, that knowing that what God does is actually wise and is actually best, right? We want to trust him, and that's why we're going into prayer, but our faith is not to the level of the knowledge of who he is, right? So we struggle to believe that he is who he is, right? So I mean, I'm sure Mary came to Jesus with the same kind of struggle, right? Like, what would Jesus do, right? So, but what I'm trying to say is that Jesus did not give a guarantee. In fact, Jesus says that, what does this have to do with me? Which means prayer is a struggle to say that, yes, this is my situation, this is my lack, and I know that you're completely capable of doing something to get me out of it, or to move me past this lack in my life. But it has to be you. It has to be, what has this got to do with you? It has to be about you. Even when you do something in my life, and if you really work a miracle, it must be about you. And that's why the water into wine, in retrospect, the author John, right? Okay, after the miracle happens, he says, This is a sign. And what happens? The disciples believed in him. It seems like the one who benefits, okay, from this miracle is not the people who are invited for the wedding, right? It's not the one who actually tasted the wine at the last minute and say, oh, wow, wonderful wine, we're going to trust Jesus. No, in fact, it's his disciples who got encouraged by the miracle, and the Bible records that they were the ones who benefit. What is going on? Why isn't the bridegroom the one that says, thank you so much, you saved my face for this wedding, right? I mean, how will you feel if on your wedding, all your peers, right, or even your love rivals, right, are there, right, and you run out of wine? Okay, in Asian context, right, it will be like, are you unable to even provide for your wife in the future context if you can't even provide enough good wine for the wedding, right? But who benefits, according to John, is not the people at the wedding. It's not the people directly drinking the miracle, the wine. It is the disciples who are walking with Jesus already, who have been called to Jesus' side already, okay, who have been already elected by Jesus to believe in him. And as John 1 says, right, but to those who believe in his name, he gave them the right to become children of God. It is they who continue to benefit from his miracle, even the first miracle. That shows something. That shows that when Jesus does a miracle, it's a sign. It is not a performance. He's not performing. It is a sign. It's a sign that is executed so that it will cause people who are in the midst of believing him to grow in their faith and their knowledge of who he is, which is that he's the life and he's the light. He's the source of true light. And he's the one who has come into the world such that if you believe in him, you would not have to perish in your darkness, right? John 1 says that all of us are in darkness. We will not perish, but we will receive clarity about life and life's purpose and life's origin, right? So this is who benefits, and not actually those who tasted the wine. This is a very interesting point, because I mean, you wouldn't think like that, right? If someone does something, very direct. We live in a world where everything is very direct, where it's very apparent, right? If someone does something good, it's obviously the person who receives the good that is the direct person who benefits from it, right? If I give you a drink, then you benefit from it. Normally the giver will not be thinking, I give you the drink, actually it's not for you. Then you would never give the drink, right? But for Jesus, he's thinking like that. I do the miracle, but it's not actually for the people who directly benefits. It's for my disciples who need to believe that I am who I say I am. So it's a sign, a sign meaning that it is not the end. No, it's not the purpose. The getting the wine is not the purpose of Jesus's miracle, right? The changing of the water into wine is not the goal. It's not the aim. The aim is to increase faith, and not faith in the bride, not the faith of the bridegroom or the bride, which you would think directly that it should be about them, right? It's their wedding. If they have wine suddenly appearing, they will be the ones impacted. But if you look at here, and his disciples believe in him, right? Rather than, oh, the whole wedding guests all of them come and thank him. It seems like Jesus knew from the start, okay, I'm doing this, okay, since I'm, right? So at this point, right, perhaps Jesus is like, what has this to do with me, right? But perhaps because he's one with the Father, he comes here, he comes to earth to do God's mission. God must have prompted him to realize that this is a moment that even this changing the water into wine at a wedding that has nothing much to do with him, has to do with him, because he's going to do a miracle that caused his disciples to believe even more in him. So you see, when Jesus does, even Jesus acceding to, you can say, Mary's request or Mary's burden, has more to do with Jesus than with Mary's desire in the first place to want to help the bridegroom. This is beyond us. Our God, our image of God, is that God would do something to help us. It's about us, right? It's about our agenda. If I ask him to do something, it must be because if he does it, it's because he's concerned the way I'm concerned about some things. But what if it's not? And the Bible is saying it's not. The Bible is saying, okay, whether sadly for you or for me, or actually it's not sad. It is the most blessed and joyful thing that can happen to us. Why? If God is limited to our narrative, right? The way that we think about things, the way that we think about our parents, the way that we think about our friends, the way that we think about ourselves, and that's the reason he acts, then it will be a very, very sad world. Because all of us are trying to act according to our narrative, but the world is in a very disastrous place, including governments who even think that sometimes they can leave without feedback. Right? That's a very, very terrible notion that they can leave without feedback, right? And churches with pastors that think they can leave without feedback as well, or they can abandon feedback. But God is beyond the narratives of flawed pastors, flawed governments, flawed individuals like you and me. God is the God that says that I will do something because it has something to do with me. And because my wisdom and my narrative is so much bigger than yours, what I do can be trusted in the end. When you look back. So Jesus is trying to make that point here, that when you come to me, come as you are truly. Remember, we went through one of the Bible talk, we were saying, don't come to God as if you are more than a human being. You're like Superman, or you're like Spider-Man, or you're like Neo in a Matrix. No, come to God because you are the failure that you are, because you are the sinner that you are, because you are the person that has run out of wine. Come to him as that. But whatever he chooses to do in that situation, accept that it has to do with him and his story that is grander and wiser and better, better than your narrative and my narrative about life, how we think life should proceed, right? Even though how we think life should proceed may be the most logical according to our knowledge now. So I'm not trying to say, that's why I go back to my point earlier and says that even if you think that you come to God and you struggle with trying to let go of this attitude of advising God, right? Advising God on what he should do, it's fine. It's not fine, but I know where you're coming from. And I do that too. And we struggle, right? But God is trying to say to us here, while he doesn't condemn us because he knows why we are actually like that, is the shape of our hearts, and that's why he needs to forgive us, to heal us from this very limited perspective on life that looks to ourselves rather than to him. But the thing is that he's trying to tell us right now that when I do something, when you come to me in prayer, remember it's more about me rather than, even more than about the motivations that drove you into prayer. Means that I'm going to answer you in a way that is even more than the motivations that first drove you into prayer. So you may be driven to prayer because you feel very upset and frustrated about one area of your life, right? Or maybe you just want God to show up to prove to you he's real, right? But whatever it is, God is saying that my narrative, my way of thinking, my way of doing a miracle is so much more than just the very motivation that drove you into prayer. I'm thinking about the 10,000 things more. But we can't see it, right? Why can't we see it? So the first thing we understand the nature of faith, right? Nature of faith is coming to God and putting no guarantee, but allowing him to act on his narrative. Secondly, the nature of the wedding. So what is God's narrative? So the whole point, right? And last week we touched a little bit on this, right? Is that Jesus saying, my hour has not yet come. Jesus said this. So we talked a little bit about my hour. We said my hour refers to Jesus' mission. He came for a certain cause. What is the cause? To die, okay, and to live a life that is perfect, righteous, and to exchange that life with us so that we who are not perfect, not righteous, can enjoy the blessing of relationship with God and have true life, who's get the source of, go back to the source of life, even though we don't deserve it. That's his mission. Okay, he has to make that sacrifice. So Jesus is saying, my hour has not yet come. This is not my wedding. So last week we touched a little on that, but let's build on that idea, right? So Jesus is telling us about the final wedding. And in Revelations, we learn about the final wedding where God will wipe away every tear, every pain, every sorrow, and death itself will be no more. So that's the hope, that if you place your trust in Jesus, it's not about how well morally you have done. It's not how well in terms of your conduct that you feel that you have achieved, people's favor, your own approval, or even God's approval, right? It's not about you. But if you have placed your trust in Jesus, who exchanged places with you, okay, giving you what you don't deserve, which is that light and that life and the source of life, and giving you that fellowship with God, then you are headed for this final wedding. So in that final wedding, every injustice, right, that you look around and you see, that I look around and I see, okay, every death that you look around and you see because of COVID, right? Every kind of death of even dreams that are noble, not dreams just to earn money, but dreams that are noble, but you find that it cannot happen because of structures that are controlling, and you feel that you're unable. You try so hard to make the business that you're on, or the occupation that you're on, the vocation, you're trying so hard to do it in a way that is noble, that will bless the people around you rather than exact from them. You're trying to serve them, but that even seems to be impossible. That even seems to be a dream that you have to lay to rest, right? So you have all this sorrow and the disappointment of a world that is no longer fair, no longer just, right? God doesn't say, like some churches say, right? Be contented. Let's not talk so much about this. Just appreciate. Let's be positive about life. No, God doesn't say that. Yes, let's appreciate the world that He has made for us. Let's appreciate the people that He's put around us. Let's appreciate every day, every breath that He gives us. Yes, but let us not appreciate death. Let us not appreciate injustice. Since when are these things to be appreciated? Let's not appreciate when those who are rich and those who are powerful take advantage of the poor, even though the poor is doing what is right, even though the poor is trying to do something that will cause positive change. But the proud and the rich have the power to stop them in this world, right? But God has a final word. This death and this injustice will soon come to an end in the final wedding. So the final wedding is between us who trust in Jesus and with Jesus, who will be our bridegroom. So we are the bride and He's the bridegroom, right? So I know you say I'm a guy, but yes, He is the bridegroom of all bridegrooms. And we as a collective group, those who trusted in Him, He will draw us to His side and finally wipe away the pain that clings to us, clings to our body, clings to our mind, the pain that we feel right now. Okay, you could be struggling with suicide, but there will come a day. Hold on, God will destroy the sorrow that you currently face. There's a final wedding that is coming. And when you think about, I'm going to end with this, right? I'm going to end with this because we always have something more to say, but we have more time in the coming weeks. The idea of wine, right? So how do you get wine? You get wine from grapes, right? So in a related chapter in John chapter 15, Jesus would say that I am the true vine. Jesus is the true vine. He is the source of all grapes and all vine, not only in the physical sense as the creator, but in the spiritual sense. He is the one that will redeem life that is broken, life that has become marred by image, by greed, by, I don't know, a love and lust for ambition, for fame, or even for sex, for power, right? He will come to redeem life that is broken. He is the true vine. And then he says this, if you abide in me, you will bear much fruit, which means you will have true life. You will be able to, and he says this, and you will have fruit that remains. What is fruit that remains? Which means that when the final wedding comes and all earthly works fade away, right? So all the things that people do to earn more, to gain more, to accumulate their bank accounts more, all this will be zero, will fade away. But for you and I, who are connected to Jesus, whatever that we do, no matter how little, no matter how oppressed it seems we are, and it seems to be so limited, our influence seems to be so limited in this world, so be it. Because there will come a day when these things that we have done because of Jesus will last. Will last. It will last. Jesus says the fruit that you bear for me will remain. It will remain because He is the true vine, which means that when sickness and death and sadness is wiped away, whatever that you have done and whatever that you have, the time that you have spent even listening to this Bible talk, even the time that you have spent trying to pray, even prayers that seem to be half advising God, half trusting Him, those prayers will last. It will be redeemed because you will be in that wedding with the one who knows you and who loves you. And He loves you enough to be telling you this, that today when you come to Him, when you have no wine and you find that in your life there is no more joy, you can squeeze, but there's no more joy, right? And I'm in that place. I don't know whether you're in that place, right? I've bad news. No, they're bad news almost yeah, every couple few days, and you find that, I mean, however small the bad news, but it does affect you, right? Emotionally, physically, right? There's all this, and the world is not getting better, and yet governments are failing us as well, right? And they are that, I mean, in certain parts of the world, there can be even corruption and injustice. So what do you do when there's no more wine? So in earthly sense, right, all the earthly sources of wine are starting to dry up. Jesus says to you, I am the true vine. That's why you say true vine, because there's a lot of other vines that promise to give you life, right? But I am the true vine. So remember we said that Moses is a representation of the law, but the law is pointing you to Jesus, right? So Moses came to give you truth, the Bible says, and came to give you the law, but Jesus came to give you grace and truth. What's the difference? The law can only show us that we truly have no more wine. We truly are broken. We truly lack, right? But Jesus is saying, then I will fill you up with true life. But you see, if you believe the prosperity gospel, if you believe the certain message, right, that tells you that Jesus will give you the same things the world goes after, right? Fame, beauty, youth. If these are the things that you want, the fame and all that, that you think Jesus is part of it, right? Making you, you can just be relaxed, couch potato whole day, and money is dropping from the sky, which is totally not God's way of prosperity or even life. Then it cannot be that Jesus is a true vine, because Jesus is giving you the same thing as the world. But what does it mean when it says Jesus is a true vine? It means all these other dreams are illusions, and they will ultimately fade away. I believe it. I don't know about you, but I believe it. All these other things will ultimately fade away. So today you may come and listen to this, and you find that, yeah, my life is not perfect. I have messed up so much in terms of even trying to follow God with the little I have, and I have not completely understood Him. I have not completely responded in faith, and I'm also not sure what He's doing right now, or wherever He's leading me. But you see, that's not the main point. I mean, that we can talk a little bit about that. There's always something to explore. The Bible speaks into all areas of life, but in today's passage, what we can know with certainty is this: the story is not over yet, right? The story is leading up to the final wedding. And whatever Jesus does in this period of time, for you and for me, right? Whether He chooses to answer our prayers or not, according to our own narrative, it's never about our narrative. Jesus is saying it's never about our narrative. Whether or not He chooses to answer or not, it's actually never about our narratives. Means even though He answers, it's also maybe not because of the motivations that we had when we asked those prayers. It is always about because He's trying to give us truly the new wine, the new life. He is the true vine, that He's preparing something that will outlast our brief moments on earth. And that is a joy that we can have when we know Him, when we know how much He loved us, because He exchanged places with us, that He, the light, has never stopped shining into our lives. Remember, we talked about this in John 1, and He's continually drawing us to Himself. That is what history is headed. Do we believe it? This is His story, and this is what He's saying, that everything else is a sign pointing to His story, and it has something to do with Him. I mean, in the final analysis. So let's just come to Him and truly be as we are, right? But acknowledge that it's about Him. Let's pray. Lord Jesus, You are the true vine. You are the true life. You are the one that has come into this world, invaded the darkness, shine in the darkness, and the darkness has failed to overcome You, because You are greater. You are more powerful than the darkness. And even though we don't see it, even though we don't feel it, even though we are like Mary saying that the wine has run out, help us to say also like Mary, whatever You say, let us do it. Not because You guarantee the things that we want, according to our own narrative or motivations. Whether or not you choose to fulfill certain things or deny certain things, that's not the point. The point is you're always doing it because there's something about you. When you do something, it always has the purpose is always to do more with something in you than in us. It's because you're working something out. And that which is you're actually redeeming all things for Your glory, and for our good, which means that you're preparing for us the true wine, the true wine, the true vine, the true life. You're preparing for us and has even begun in us because we have trusted you. So help us to trust you in this new year. Thank you for loving us because you exchanged places with us. When you came to earth, you exchanged places with us on the cross. So thank you, Lord. We pray a blessing for all those who are watching this and even for the one that's speaking. In Jesus' name, amen. So we thank you for listening to our Bible talk today and hope it blessed you in a special way.